Hello, business owners. You may recently have heard about SVDP or PKPS in connection with Malaysia e-invoice implementation. SVDP refers to the e-invoice Special Voluntary Disclosure Program. In Bahasa Malaysia, it may refer to as Program Khas Pengakuan Sukarela or PKPS. In simple terms, the program provides an opportunity for taxpayer to rectify inaccuracy and regularize certain e-invoice compliance gap within the applicable program period. For example, a business may discover that some transactions were not submitted correctly, certain e-invoice were missed, or information submitted to MyInvoice may not agree with the underlying business records. So the Inland Revenue has introduced specific SVDP document version to facilitate participation in the program. SVDP version 1.2 applies without a digital signature, while SVDP version 1.3 applies to a digital signature. However, SVDP should not be treated as an invitation to upload every transaction immediately. Before making any submission, the business should first understand what happened, identify the affected transactions, reconcile the supporting records, and determine the appropriate corrective treatment. That brings us to the first and most important message here. Missing e-invoices? Don't rush to submit everything at once. When business owners discover an e-invoice implementation gap, the natural reaction is often, let us correct everything immediately before the authorities question us. The intention may be good, but a rush correction can create a second compliance problem. You may submit a transaction that already exists, use an incorrect amount, or create an e-invoice that does not agree with your accounting records. Therefore, the first step is not submission. The first step is understanding exactly what went wrong. Many businesses believe that regularization is simply an administrative exercise. They identify a list of missing invoices, pass the list to the accounts team or software provider, and ask them to submit everything. But speed without clarity can multiply the problems. For example, the original invoice may already have been submitted under another invoice number. The sales amount may have been amended later, but the team may still be relying on the original amount. The transaction may have been cancelled, refunded, or replaced by another document. If the team does not verify these facts first, it may correct the wrong transaction, duplicate an existing records, or submit information that does not agree with the accounts. That is why regularization should begin with a review, not reaction. Behind one apparently missing e-invoice, there could be several different problems. The first possibility is that the transaction already exists in MyInvoice, perhaps under a different reference number. Submitting it again could create duplication. The second possibility is that the amount does not reconcile. The invoice, accounting ledger, payment records, and bank statement may all show different amounts. The third possibility is incomplete or incorrect buyer information. Correcting only the invoice amount would not solve the problem if the buyer's detail remain unreliable. The fourth possibility is that the payment and supporting documents tells different stories. For example, the payment received may not agree with the invoice, or the delivery documents may relate to a different quantity. These are not merely software problems. They are documents, process, and control problems that should be understood before the business decides what to submit. Before correcting an e-invoice, trace the complete transaction story. Start with the customer's order or the original commercial arrangement. Then confirm whether the goods were delivered or services were performed. Next, examine the invoice that was issued to the customers. Compare it with the payment received and the amount recorded in the accounting ledger. Finally, check the transaction's current status in MyInvoice. These records should tell the same commercial story. If one part of the trail does not agree, pause and identify the reason for the difference. Do not assume that the last document you found is automatically the correct documents to submit. A reliable regularization process should allow an independent reviewer to follow the transaction from its original source through its final e-invoice treatment. The key principle is simple. Regularization should begin with clarity, not submission. Clarity means identify what actually happened. Was the e-invoice completely missed? Was it submitted but rejected? Was it validated with incorrect information? Was the transaction subsequently cancelled, discounted, or refunded? Or does the underlying commercial records itself require further investigation? Once the problem has been clarified, the business can reconcile its record and assess the appropriate response. This is clarity stage of properly controlled e-invoice implementation process. Without clarity, the business may simply transfer an existing internal error into MyInvoice. Here is a useful self-check for business owners. Can your team trace every affected transaction from the original order or invoice to the payment received, to the accounting records, and finally to its current status in MyInvoice? If your team can complete that trail confidently, you have a stronger foundation for reviewing the regularization. But if the answer is uncertain, your business may have more than a submission gap. You may have a document gap, a reconciliation gap, an unclear responsibility, or a weakness in your operating process. Those gaps should be addressed so that the same problem does not continue after the SVDP submission. Before you regularize, prepare properly. I have created a SVDP or PKPS e-invoice document preparation checklist to help businesses identify the records they should gather before taking the next step. So the checklist covers business and taxpayers information, original sales and transaction documents, existing MyInvoice submission records, submission readiness requirements, and important pre-submission control questions. Use the checklist to organize your documents and identify where information may still be missing. However, remember that collecting documents is only the beginning. The next step is to reconcile the information, classify the implementation gap, and determine what action is appropriate for each affected transaction. If you would like to assess whether your business is document ready and process ready for e-invoice regularization, complete the checklist and arrange an e-invoice readiness discussion with us. I would like to put a closing disclaimer here. This presentation is provided for general education purposes only. Eligibility for the programs, the appropriate documents version, and the correct treatment for each transaction depend on the prevailing inland revenue requirements and the specific facts of the business. Please verify the latest original guidance and obtain professional or technical advice before making any submission.